Hey there, and welcome to Latitude Photography Podcast. This is a live edition where we're going to be looking at listener submitted images, and I'm just thrilled to have you here. I'm your host, Brent Bergherm, and I have a special guest with me. He's a Latitude regular, so that means he's just been on the show a few times, and his name is Drake Dick. Drake, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Hi, Brett. Thanks. It's good to be back again, and um, looking forward to discussing these photos we looked at. So if anybody hasn't heard me before here, my background is landscape photography, forests. I'm based on Vancouver Island, so you see a lot of that type of stuff in my photography.
Yes, I remember our first conversation we had about Vancouver Island and just the different places to go around there. I was just like, I have to visit so badly. And it's one of these days, once they open the borders up, then it's going to be becoming really tempting to get up there. Of course, I'll take the ferry, bring my car along so I can drive and go to all these different wonderful places you have up there on the island. So, uh, listeners or viewers, if you want to learn more, latitudephotographypodcast.com. You can just search for either Drake's name or Vancouver Island or something like that, and you'll undoubtedly be able to find that episode and be able to get to it there. All right, let's transition to our images. The theme this time is under the sun, and what I was looking for is to create some kind of challenge, some kind of definition to where we could have the listeners submit images that were incorporating the sun in the frame, and then also something of intrigue, something of interest in the composition between us and the frame. And hey, I see Bree is there with us. She's saying, "Hey guys," so hey Bree, it's wonderful to have you there. I'm trying to find a way so I can see who all is participating. Unless you're leaving a comment, I actually don't know you're here. But Bree, it's great to have you here. Thank you. And so with this idea of under the sun, it's all about, like I said, something of the sun is in the frame, and you will see a couple of them where the sun very distinctly itself is not in the frame, but that's because some people made a submission. I was like, oh, you gotta, I want to include that. And so I started to kind of wedge in some little bit of here and there. And so we'll see some that somewhat have tiny diversions away from that. So let's go ahead and switch on over and take a look at what we're talking about here with Under the Sun. And so this first image comes to us. Mike Holmes sent this one in, and he actually emailed this image. And with this image, we've got this very distinct sunburst, very bright, very distinct sunburst up there in the upper central part. Have three primary trees in the background area, and as we get down to the foreground, we've got this stump, this stump that has been kind of broken. It's eroding. It's just kind of decaying, and it's converted to black and white. And then he's also created this little vignette, this border vignette that I had to email him. I was like, I just want to make sure, but is this, was this done on film? I didn't think it was, but with a border like that, it just kind of gives you the feel of this is a film frame and kind of the like. And he said, no, it's digital. So Drake, open it up with your thoughts on this image. Just tell us briefly what you think about it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at the side where I've got the image up, and I like the composition of it. The sun in the nice opening around, surrounded by the trees. A little bit of foreground interest with the stump there. I did see there's a lot of sunspots, and I'm not sure. There's also some lines that go horizontal across, sort of behind the sun star, and I found that a bit distracting. I'm not sure if maybe something was a bit dirty there.
That's the thing that kind of gave it away to me, that it was a digital image, because I've seen this happen on my own images when I get the sun or another very bright, intense element there. And what I think you're talking about is this pattern, and I'm going to kind of point it out here on screen for those that are watching. This pattern, where these little dots kind of come into it here, and they're regular dots, and they kind of go in a they're little bit of a convex shape, and so that tells me, there's something with the lens shape, there's something with the sensor going on, or what have you. We also have regular lens flare, and that's these other much larger dots that are a little more haphazardly scattered. And I don't know that we can say that there's dust or anything like that on the lens. I mean, that could certainly cause a little bit of extra lens flare, but I don't really think that's that. I think it's just a characteristic of the lens and the fact that it was so bright for this sun. And then with this pattern going on here, that looks very similar to when I take a loop, a dust viewer loop on the camera sensor when I'm cleaning a sensor, and I can see that pattern, and it's usually a green sense because there's twice as many green color filter arrays as there are red or blue, so it kind of has a green tint to it, and so I see that pattern very distinctly in there when I'm cleaning a sensor. So when you have that intense view, that intense light, it's reflecting off of the filter, what do we call it, the low pass filter, if it has it, or just the glass that covers the sensor, reflects that back onto the back element of the lens, and then it records that in the image itself. As far as the overall composition is concerned, I actually kind of like this composition. The nice the arrangement of the trees really helps to frame the image. We've got the very strong sunburst. I think, to me, also the conversion to black and white helps me in this image because it makes those patterns, it makes those lens flares just not as obtrusive. And so we're able to then focus on all the good stuff that we have down here with this decaying stump and the ground and all the detail down there. So that helps. The black and white, I think, helps on this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, let's take a look at the next one. And I have to click on it, it looks like. There we are. All right, so this one submitted by Mike Regas. He says, here is one for Under the Sun. Hopefully it will make it into the review. Well, here it is, Mike. Shot at Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge in Titusville, Florida. And so we've got a really long lens. And I asked him like 400 or so, and he responded back. It's like, no, this is more like 600. So we're really zooming in. The sun is really big in the frame. We've got some clouds in front of the sun. We've got some beautiful orange behind the sun. And we have a single tree that's kind of silhouetted a little bit off to the left and below the sun, and then a little bit of detail in the foreground. And so just a nice zoomed in, really tightly zoomed in shot. What do you think, Drake?
Yeah, I'm liking it. The oranges and greens go nice together. I'm not sure. I think that's a bird you can see there. The one looks somewhat distinctly like a bird. But
yeah,
I
this
noticed
little
there's
dot
couple
is a
more.
little bit off to the right-hand side of the sun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
if you
I
look
think that is a
above,
bird.
if you look above that a bit, there's another dot, which I assume is bird,
Yeah.
but it just looks like a dust speck almost. It's so small, which maybe you would have wanted to clean that up. But aside from that, I think it's pretty nice. The just slightly off center to the left looks good to me that way.
Yeah.
There is a tree on the far right edge that sort of sticks up. I'd like to either maybe see that cropped off or just a little bit more included because it looks like it's not quite right there.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
the way it's set up. Sure.
And I might suggest crop a little bit off the bottom as well, and that will lower that horizon, make the sun feel even more powerful and a bit bigger. And it just might it might increase the strength of that composition just a hair if we were to crop that bottom just a little bit. But we do at least have some detail there, and that's where I tend to go back and forth sometimes. Do I want to see and enjoy that detail, or do I want to focus more on the shapes and the layering and things like that? And that's where I think something in the middle there, where we crop a little bit of it off, leave some of the detail, but then allow those layers of these different elements in the image to be a little more enhanced by that crop. That I think that's going to come through. And then, chopping that thing off on the right a little bit, I can see that making a little bit of sense as well. All right, the next image.
The only other.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
Go
I was
ahead.
just saying one last thing, and I mean somewhat personal taste, but the his signature on the bottom side there, I find those a little bit bright and distracting.
Okay.
I think sometimes if you sort of cut it back to 50% or something, just to make it fade in a little bit more, it won't draw the eye as much.
Yeah, and yeah, that's something I certainly don't fault people for putting it on there myself.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe making it 50% opacity or what have you. Either way, if it were bigger, I would probably have a problem with it. But it's not too big. It's
Yeah.
pretty good size. All right, this one by Chad Holiday, and he says he likes how the sunlight reflects off the water and contrasts against the silhouetted bridge and trees at sunset. So we've got this let's see, the Ohio River in Kentucky shot of a train bridge, and so the train bridge is receding off into the background. The sun is nearly in the middle of the frame, but we've got this silhouetted bridge, and we've got these pilings that are holding up the bridge, of course. We have on the right hand side a silhouetted tree, very clear blue sky that transitions to that rich golden yellow hue, and then a little bit of very dark silhouetted, if you will, ground before us. And so that's where I think what I might suggest is this bottom section here, see what we can do to maybe crop a little bit of that out and let it end with all this beautiful goodness of all that light coming there, and let the framing end right there maybe. Unless you're going to crop a little bit off the left-hand side, though, you're going to still run into some on the left-hand side. So I wouldn't want to crop all the way up. That would be too much of a crop if we were to crop all that stuff out. So maybe crop a little bit off the left, a little bit up, and then I think, leave that silhouetted tree on the right-hand side. That's a beautiful framing element, and it just holds everything in nice and provides that little extra balance, that little extra piece of goodness for the image.
Yeah, I agree with you there on the framing. I like that tree on the right hand side, and I like the angle the bridge comes in at. It really draws the eye towards the sun, which, being the brightest, really attracts you. Um, I had the same sort of idea about the bottom, just either cropping it out or at very least, if they could lighten the shadows on the water behind it so it gave it more of a distinct
Mm,
line. It just almost
sure.
fades out, and it sort of muddies the picture for me. But overall, I like this composition and this image.
But great job too on holding that color detail in where the reflection is and where the sun is. It's not just blown out pure white. And it's possible, I've done this several times when I have an image like this, where I'll just go into Photoshop and I'll literally paint something on there and then blend it in so it feels really good. But kudos to that for not letting it go just pure white in this image, because I think if we had done that, it would be a little bit bothersome.
Yeah.
All right, our next image by Torben Hart, and we've got a let's see. He says it is not quite sure if submissions are still open. Of course they are, but it made it in, so that's awesome. Something that was under the sun. He shot it last year before the first COVID lockdown in Germany. It's shot from the top of the enormous sandstone, quote, mountains in Saxony, close to the border of the Czech Republic. It was very early and it was cold, but that's what you get when you're into landscape photography. Yes, absolutely. So we have a silhouette of this tree, and it kind of makes me feel like a bonsai tree because the very knurled and very thickly present, I guess we can say, trunk quickly goes into these thin little spindles of branches that have these little bunches of these tiny little leaves, these tiny little just whatever they are that makes up this tree. I don't know what kind of tree this is. The mountain that it's on is silhouetted. He says it's early, so this is certainly a sunrise. Have a little bit of a burst coming through the one of the angles there in the branches. What do you think, Drake?
Again, very nice image. I like the sunburst and the whole concept of it. There's a lot of sky and a lot of black at the bottom. So I think it could either be enhanced by just zooming in, cropping in a little bit tighter, or perhaps just doing more of a straight panorama, uh, something a little narrower ratio there. But overall, it's nice. There's a little bit of detail in the in the background there. Maybe if he could enhance that a little bit just on the side would be nice. But overall, I'm really enjoying this one as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see this one just try it out on a square crop because all that extra stuff on the left hand
Yeah.
side, while it's providing a good balance and a good space and a good negative space and all things like that, I just wonder what would happen with a good square crop. And we would probably want to take a little bit of the bottom off if we did that, because otherwise it would be cutting across right in the middle. But I don't know. It might work out because it would still be that nice, very strong element right there in the foreground, and it could work pretty well. I think worth it to just test it out and see anyway. But it's fairly monochromatic as well. We do have some warm hues. We have some cool hues as we get away from the axis of the sun, and I like that calm, subtle colors that are coming through. You know, we could have totally punched these colors more, and I just don't think this is a calming image, and to keep those colors calm, I think really works well. All
I think
right, the
so.
next one, almost the exact opposite. Very punchy, very rich colors. We have a silhouette of a person standing in front of the sun, and the sun is right on top of the person's head, and we see some of the ocean basically behind the person. The horizon is at about the person's knees or so, and so we have, you know, it's a little bit looking up as it were, but otherwise it's almost a square crop. It's probably a 2 to 3 type crop. He said this fellow stood on the beach. This is Carl Spencer, by the way. He said this fellow stood on the beach in this position for over an hour. The sky was wonderful. The challenge was handling the sun. Used on one raw for post processing. The hardest thing to do was to remove the lens flare that started to wash out the fellow. And there we have it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he did a pretty good job handling the sun the way it is. Maybe just slightly blown out, but I think the picture can handle it. What I think is a little bit strong is the saturation in it. It's a little bit orange, heavy saturation for me.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, there's a couple of birds you can see, but then there's a few more again that look like they could be dust specks, and probably if they were removed, nobody would mind, and I think it would make it a cleaner image. Um, but it's a nice silhouette that he was able to get him standing there right in front of the sun. If there was a way that he could have got the sun just have a little bit more of a gap so it wasn't quite touching his head,
Yeah.
um, it would look nice. But yeah, I think that's what I have for it on now.
Yeah, that's the thing that I look at is it feels like a merger and an
Yeah,
uncomfortable merger. And so what we're looking at there when I talk about a merger is something in the background is merging with your object in the foreground. And the biggest merger that I don't like is like if I had a portrait of someone and then you had a tree growing out of their head or something like that. And that just doesn't, it's a visual something that we just can't, sometimes we just can't, it's subconscious. We just can't get rid of it, but we know there's something there that just doesn't feel right. And so with this one, what I would love to see is actually a bit of a compositional shift where we put the sun off to the left-hand side, let the person stay on the right-hand side, or vice versa, but whatever, and let them be design elements that kind of bounce off each other. When we bring them so close together like this, it changes it considerably, and it's I think if that sun were to be lower, so it was behind the person and the person is rim lit, that could be amazing.
yeah.
But as this is now with the sun up in the sky and the excellent texture in the clouds, shifting that person one way or the other so it's not connected to the sun, I think would be a slightly stronger composition there. All right, let's go to this next one. And Bree, she was here and saying hello on the comments, and now here's her image. Here we have an image, and I welcome her to chime in and tell us where this is from because I don't have it here in the infos. We have, it looks like it's like White Sands National Monument or something along those lines. And we have the sun just barely out of the frame up off the top. We have a mountain ridge, and then we have these sand dunes coming in just left and right, left and right. And the colors are very subtle. We got lots of pink, soft hues, some yellow, orangish hues coming into it. And she's telling us White Sands National Park. So, yay, I was right. And I think I called it National Monument, though. And so, anywho, what do you think, Drake? Lots of layering in this image.
It is. I really like the way the layers zigzag and overlap over top each other and draw you right to the mountains with the sun over them. I thought that was well done. The almost pastel colors in there, it all goes together really well. Um, I really, I think I might have seen this before. I'm not sure if it's one she had in her show because I saw the video she had of that, and
Right.
but I really didn't have much to say could be improved on this, other than there was again just a few little specks in the sand that probably were there, but look odd. There's a line off on the upper left side that looks almost
Mm,
man-made, and to me doesn't quite go with everything else there. But
I see it.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's fairly minor. I'm sort of picking at grains of sand here to
Yeah.
find things to complain about because I really like this image.
Yeah. She says also it's one of her favorite places. Uh, the thing that really helps me with this composition, not just the layering, but then we have the difference in tonality between those sand dunes. So the forward sand dune is a lot brighter than the second sand dune. Then the other one is a little bit brighter yet, and then it darkens again. So we have this pattern going of tones here in the foreground. We then have those lines that are launching us up. They're taking us from the lower left or launching us up. We then go up towards the right. We then go off towards the left again. We go off towards the right again. And that all just leads us and takes us on a journey, a visual journey up to the sun. And that just, it just leads us right to where we want to go. This image is not one that has a circular pattern. Sometimes I like to say, well, let's find a way to draw the eye back around and start over again. Here you end at the sun, and that's pretty much it. But I think that's all this image needs, because once you're there at the sun, you start to just kind of wander a little bit. You start to say, I mean, those colors taste like a peach, basically. And so, it makes me just think of other good things, and my eyes start to wander, and then I enjoy the ridge and things like that. So, by simplifying the image so strongly, we're really emphasizing the shapes, we're emphasizing the forms, we're emphasizing the use of color, and all those things just start to really come to a head. And that's what helps make this image fairly strong and fairly it keeps your attention. I think that's the kind of the thing. It keeps it a little bit longer, possibly. All right, our next image, Bill Fleming, Under the Sun. He says, a bluebird day sunset at Bosque Sound. Sorry, he says Bogue Sound. I read that wrong. What we have here is a sunset, very clear sky. We have directly above the sun. Yes, sorry, I got distracted by Bree. He says she loves that. Tastes like a peach. Anyway, no more distractions. Not your fault, Bree. Right directly above the sun, about the same distance, let's see, about 2/3 of the way up from the bottom, we have a little bit of a collection of birds. And since there's like 7 of them there or 5 of them there, I think we get the idea that these birds are flying through, and that's kind of nice. We have certainly a gradated tone from the sun out in the clear sky. There's no clouds. But the interesting part is the water. Talk to us a little bit, Drake, about this image.
Yeah, this is another really nice one. The sun just starting to dip below the horizon. Looks really good there. The orange glow on the water is quite nice, and I like the way the sky fades from orange into the deeper blue there.
Mm-hmm.
It it does have a lot of sky, and the sky is clear except for one little cloud on the left side just above the horizon, which drew my eye off to the side there. But um, other than that, I didn't see any huge issues with this.
Yeah.
It's nice. I love the way the little islands or whatever they are there sort of pop up out, and nice low angle he's got it at. It was a well done shot.
Yeah, and the sun is off, it's not fully centered. Just, certainly sometimes it just absolutely works when it's
Yeah,
centered, but this works when it's off centered. And so it's nice to
yeah.
have it just a little bit off center, almost in the rule of thirds area.
Just
All
about.
right, Peter Turnbull. This was from Luca on the north coast of New South Wales, Australia. Ah, love me some images from other continents. That's awesome. Good to see these coming in. So we've got the sun peeking through, and we've got a little bit of a starburst coming through because of it as well. So we're probably in the neighborhood of F16 or so to get that sunburst coming through. But with these trees that have a very interesting root system, and then some grasses on the ground, some very interesting items going on in the sky with some clouds, some decent color in the clouds. This one, we just started talking about how the sun in the previous image was off to the side. This one, the sun is pretty much smack dab in the middle. And we just have detail everywhere. So those trees lead you to the sun. Then there's a nice breathable negative space out somewhere else. It looks like we do have a dust spot right there in the middle of that transitioning sky. But other than that, I don't see any other dust spots. But yeah, what else do you think there, Drake?
Yeah, it's nice. It's well lit, and those trees are really interesting. And I think this is another image that if we cropped off the left side, I don't know if we want to do it square or just zoom in a little more so that you really see the details in these trees, because they've
Yeah,
got a lot of character, and it's a great sunburst there. Um, and I really think actually the bottom portion of the picture with that sandy patch on it, if you cropped it sort of just above that so you didn't see the sand, and brought it in a little bit tighter, it would really add something to it. But as it is, I'm really liking it. The
yeah,
directly above the sun, there's a cloud that's a little bit blown out. Um, but other than
right.
that, the rest of it looks pretty nice.
So I'm curious, do you have a technique for dealing with blown out clouds?
Uh, no,
No?
I essentially I play around in Lightroom to see what the different filters will do in that,
Sure.
and it's something a little different every time I end up coming
Yeah.
up with. But uh, basically, just trying not to do it in camera is
Yeah.
what I try to do mostly, right?
Because you can certainly try and do some luminosity masking and do some exposure blending if you were to grab, because you could totally grab another exposure. I don't know, maybe in the neighborhood of 6 stops or 4 stops darker, probably be better. So you have the detail, you can work with it, you can bring it in, but certainly those are clouds. They're going to be moving, and so it's just not going to work all that well in a
Yeah.
shot like this. And what I have done sometimes, I'll literally use either a different cloud texture from a different image, or I've also had success, and I know people are just going to be like, you've got to be kidding me. But there's a really bad rendering system in Photoshop that's called Render Clouds. And the reason I say it's bad is because it doesn't look like anything like clouds. It looks more like cotton candy. And, 5-day-old cotton candy at that. But if you just massage it in just a tiny amount, bring that opacity low, mask it with a soft mask and all sorts of things, and you just get a little bit of tiniest amounts of detail in there so it's not blown out, and then you bring in some color. It might take a little bit of work, but you can have it to where it doesn't blow out like that. And maybe it could work with your image. Maybe it could work where it feels natural. It's still something that is It's still something that is a risky, shall we say, because it
Yeah.
might not work, and it would be totally better to go this direction rather than being like, "Oh, I tried to make it work, and so I left it because I just want to show you that I tried." If it doesn't work, then get rid of it. Uh, Peter, he's actually watching. Thank you. He says thanks for the feedback. He hadn't thought of cropping, but it makes sense. Yeah, it's good to think about, this, just these options, and this is the kind of thing. Hopefully, when we're out there in the field the next time, uh, we start to see some of these other options too, and then we start to shoot these other options, and that's where becomes really a lot of work, because then you've got a lot of work to decide what's the best framing, when you get back home and you're dealing with the pictures. So maybe we're just making more work for you, Pete, but that's it's good to see these options though, and to consider these options for sure. All right, this is one of those that kind of wedged its way in with this idea of under the sun, Nathan Goldberg and sunset reflections. And basically, we have the sun reflecting on a detailed part of a building, and so it's really brilliantly lit. We do have a little tiny area here. I'm going to kind of mouse over it here, and this is somewhat lower, just under the center portion of the image, where there's a little bit brighter hot spot of the reflection. And so I was like, yeah, maybe we could call that the sun or whatever. What do you think of this idea, Drake? The way that this reflection is coming in this building. Obviously, it's in the huge city. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. I like the reflection, the deep red color in it, and just sort of the pattern it gives on there is quite interesting. And of course, the portrait orientation it's in is perfect for this. The only thing that distracts me is the sort of greenish white
Yeah.
light on the left side there. There's a couple apartment buildings that aren't in the red sunlit areas, and they take my eye away. So if maybe Nathan could have dropped the brightness of those areas, it might have improved it. But
Yeah.
overall, it's nice. The horizontal lines, sorry, the vertical lines are nice and straight, and it's well done.
When you mentioned the somewhat greenish tonality there, it reminded me of a shot I did way back in 2002. Oh, that was so long ago. Um, I was getting the Hong Kong skyline, and I was shooting film, so we didn't have the ease of you know targeting and just doing a subtle adjustment, but I had my color correction filter with me, and that was the fluorescent color correction filter. So for daylight balanced film with fluorescent lights, you would get this hideous green cast. And when you put this magenta colored filter on it, it balances it out. It's really, very evenly balanced. Then it looks like normal lighting. And so the apartment complex, the buildings I was shooting, just tons and tons of lights that were on. And then, of course, there's regular lights out behind, and there's all these other lights going on with all the whatever. And it was kind of a foggy, cloudy evening, I should say. And so all the lights of the city, because it's just neon city, and I was just like, well, those are going to all go magenta. And I was like, they're probably going to be okay. I just can't have that green. And so I put that magenta filter on there, and it was beautiful. It was gorgeous. I was so happy with it, even though I had all that extra pink in there. Now, in this regard, I would say definitely just target it, because we have all these other things that are just really well warm. You can just target it, neutralize that a little bit so it doesn't have so much green in it, and it's super easy to then not distract the eye as much with that. It does feel, and if he's listening or watching or what have you, I would invite his feedback here, but it does feel that actually this is a secondary reflection. So it feels like the sun is coming in and lighting up a building that's kind of behind him, and then it's reflecting on this other building that's in shadow. And so we then have this secondary reflection happening, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is a direct reflection from the
The,
sun. I don't know.
that's what it looks like to me too. When you look at sort of the top center there, right on
Yeah.
that concrete post that goes all the way down.
Yep.
That looks like a building shape.
Yes, it looks like the pinnacle of a building of some
Yeah.
sort, and that's what makes me think we're looking at a secondary reflection. And so there's just a little extra, because it's a secondary reflection, there's a little extra interest in there with how that light is playing here on these balconies and all these apartments. So yeah, it's cool. Definitely different from where you and I live, Drake.
Oh yeah.
Being that we both tend to live a little bit in the more rural type regions of the world.
Absolutely.
All right, another one from Bill Fleming. 30 years ago, that is, he says this was taken, photographed on Kodak Ektar 25 120 film in a 6x7 centimeter camera, a Bronica GS1. Oh man! So yeah, this takes us a way back in history. But take a look at those clouds. Those clouds are incredibly interesting. Up in the upper right-hand corner, the sun is just nice and small. It's really strong. It's really present. But then we've got these boats. This is, we're standing on a dock of some sort. We have a smaller boat here in the foreground with a seagull right on the bow, which is kind of cool. We've got two other fishing type trawlers in the midground, and then of course the far background is where the clouds and the sun is. What do you think, Drake?
Yeah, it's quite the clouds there and quite interesting. Um, the boat in the foreground there with the seagull on the bow of it. I almost missed the seagull when I was first looking at it
Yeah.
because it's a little bit dark there, and he's actually quite an interesting little addition to it. So if maybe you could lighten up that area just a bit, because the whole right-hand side is a fair bit darker
Yeah.
than the rest of it. So if you'd lift the shadows a bit would be nice. I was also thinking that, and now 30 years later, obviously you can't do this, but if you were to have been to the left a little bit farther and rotated the camera clockwise so that the sun was a little bit more to the left, but you
Mm.
really featured those clouds that are up there, because right now as it is, most of the left side of the screen is empty. There's not the same attraction in the clouds. All the boats are on the right side, so it seems a little bit unbalanced to me that way.
Yeah, and then there is a slight tilt, it feels, in the horizon. But yeah, those clouds, those are rather interesting. And I do like too that boat in the foreground. It points directly to the sun, so
Yeah,
there is a conversation going on, a visual conversation happening, and so that's kind of cool. Um, but yeah, there's without that bird, I don't think it would be anywhere near as interesting. It's nice to have that little extra piece of goodness there,
yeah,
and that's just awesome. All right, our next one is from Brett Baker, and for some reason my screen down here, my main screen wasn't refreshing, so I'm going to do that, and here we go. So we bounced around a little bit. Great sunrise this morning, he says, shot from my living room. Two shots with my D5100 at 220 millimeters stitched in Lightroom. And then I was like, hey, you need a neighbor because this is amazing. It's just gorgeous. This snow-capped mountain, a little bit of wind and clouds kind of blowing over it. And then the sun is just coming in very strongly, very brilliantly lit in the left-hand side. We have a mountain ridge that's silhouetted. We still have a little bit of detail in that silhouette, but still is mountain ridge coming through in the foreground area. Darker clouds up above, but brilliantly lit right there in the middle.
yeah. It's really brilliantly lit there, and it gives a nice outline on the mountain that's in front of it on the left. Um, it it's so bright on that side. That seems to be all that I stare at, though.
Yeah.
Um, and you lose a lot of everything else on the right. And that area again, it being so bright, unfortunately, there's not a lot of detail in there. Um, but I mean, it's a beautiful scene, and those mountains there are just something incredible. Like you said, yeah, yeah. What do I need to do to be your neighbor?
Yeah.
The clouds up top seem a little bit unnaturally dark to me.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure if that's actually how they look to them, but that's my only comments. I really it's a beautiful place and nice framing, a nice image.
Yeah, I wonder, I don't know his processing settings in Lightroom or whichever he processes it. Oh, he says stitch in Lightroom. So yes, Lightroom. I just wonder if those shadows could be boosted a little more and then they feel considerably cool. So somehow warming the shadows just a
Yeah.
hair might help a little bit too, because it does feel a little bit on the cool side. I think we need to keep that coolness. There's that contrast there, the warm sun and the cool snow and things like that. But it just feels a little more on the cooler than what maybe I don't know. It's worth an experiment to
Yeah.
just play it around and see. And certainly, we're also when we're looking at these tiny little details, we could be full of fluff because we're certainly not looking at it on Brett's screen either. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
as I have my two screens here, what appears to be going out to YouTube is considerably darker than what I'm viewing on my screen here. So it's just kind of like, okay, what's correct? I don't know. And how am I going to comment on such things? But that's where I just have to talk in broad terms and just say, for what I'm seeing, that's where I would go and say, let's try and lighten that up just a hair more, see what happens, and run with it. All right, the next one. This is another one of those where the sun isn't exactly fully present, but this was the image actually that I saw that I was just like, go ahead and tag it as Under the Sun because it's such a gorgeous image. This is by Robert Clay, and we have a submerged boat and it is submerged in the sand but these clouds above it are just radiating with this pink hue, and that all centers down on the boat structure. We've got the what is it, the cabin where the pilot would be and whatnot. It's all pointing to that, and it's really bright off to the right hand side. Certainly that's where the angle where the sun is coming from, and then it's blue as you go to the left hand side. We're looking up, so the horizon is probably at the 80%. It's 80% sky or so, 20% ground. So give me your thoughts there, Drake.
Yeah. I love this one as well. I like you say the way the clouds lead right into the center, right to the front of the sunken boat, and the whole image really grabs your attention right away. Um, you mentioned the area on the right that's quite bright. Um, that's that's another sort of focus point, but it almost is wedge shaped, and that bright wedge sends you right back to the center, right back to
Yeah,
the ship. So I think this works really well.
yeah, good point. All right, here's another one of a tree with a sunburst in the middle. And, it's interesting how many of these we got in, but I got to tell you, it's not like I got tired of them at all. These are just beautiful subjects, beautiful images, good color coming through on this one as well, like the others. He says, Gerald Sargent, he says, late summer afternoon. And Brett Baker, he had another one that he had submitted. We just looked at. He responded, "You have accomplished something we all strive to accomplish, an image that conveys a feeling, lovely image." And it does convey a feeling. I'm going to put you on the spot, Drake. To you, what feeling does this image evoke?
To me, it's happiness.
Happiness.
I
Okay.
I just love it. I feel warm. I feel like I want to be
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking warmth. I was feeling. I can't say I was thinking happy, but I can see where you're going with that. But when I see something like this, I start to feel contemplative, and I start to feel, I guess, a little bit relaxed because it's mostly there's a little fence going through there and things like that. But when we just have this 100% nature kind of stuff going on, it just starts to it like flips a little switch in my head, and it really starts to just shift my focus on other things that are important in life, and that is life itself. Here we have a tree with, what is that, one, two, three, four, five main trunks, main branches that are splitting off this trunk in a very short order. And that is just so unique to me. There's actually a sixth one that goes down actually along the way there. And that just is so incredibly unique to me. I've never seen a tree like that. And there's just, I don't know, is a huge appreciation for all that is, uh, in this case, this tree, but you know, in another case, it might be a field of grasses or whatever the case is. The sunburst, you know, it kind of helps give you that point of interest, the little extra kind of thing going on. The stark shadows coming forward on the ground provides some visual interest as well. So yeah, I think overall good job. I think the only thing for the view again that I'm looking at, the only thing I might look for is maybe a little bit of vignetting on the edges to hold the eye in a little more. And maybe he's already done a little bit of that, but possibly bring in a little bit more blue in the sky too. It does feel a little bit lost in the blue, but again, that just might be the screen that I'm viewing it on too.
Yeah, the only other thing I think, as lovely as it is, the main trunk itself almost looks like it was lightened a little too much. It seems
Okay.
muddy somewhat. So whether he could have tried to either not lighten it, go with a little bit darker, or have done some stacking there and taken something at a little different aperture or a different ISO. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, beautiful.
Cool. All right. The next one, Jeremy Schwartz. Distant Giants, he's calling it. He had to, I'm thinking, have been in an airplane. Looking south towards the winter sunset with Denali, North America's highest point, 170 miles distant in the horizon. So, yes, I would assume we're in an airplane, and yeah, we can barely see. I'm assuming this little nub there on the horizon is Denali since it's so far away. And the sun is really bright. It's a bit of a horizontal, it's a panoramic type approach to the framing. And right across the bottom, we've got some mountain type ridges, hill ridges, and then a road is cutting in and wrapping around one of those ridges. And I kind of like that little piece of interest. I do think the sun is slightly on the bright side, but you know, I mean, it's supposed to be. It's the sun, right? But to bring back a little bit of color there, to tone it down just about another 2 or 3% would probably help just a tiny amount. What do you think, Drake?
Yeah, I agree with you on the lighting there. The sun just touch on the bright side, but either the road is interesting to me, but the baldish white area on the left
Yeah.
is sort of a negative interest to me. So I don't know if you cropped it a little differently again to eliminate that, then you'd really have a super narrow image, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that would work, but yeah, other than that, it's very nice. I'm pretty sure that is Denali off on the left side of the frame there. You can see that there. Knowing what it is now, it adds something else to the image. So
Sure.
yeah, I like this one.
Sure. And the clouds, you know, the length, as shall we call it, the streakiness length of the clouds
Yeah,
is kind of fun to see too. They're fairly flat and fairly wide, and not your standard puffy, you know,
yeah,
cumulus type, but they're very elongated, and they maximize the effect of the panorama feel.
absolutely.
All right, here's one by Alan Aber. He says, just barely under the sun. Here we have a family. It looks like a mother with two young children standing reflected in the surf, and the sun is literally just behind the clouds. There's a little bit of that silver lining, rim lighting, where the sun is still kind of peeking over. About 5% of the sun is peeking over the ridge. But then they're standing on wet sand, and we have this beautiful reflection area. There's no area that's dry sand. It's all this reflection and all this color, with a little bit of interest in the water, and then certainly the interest in those people standing there.
Yeah, another beautiful one. The oranges and the blues go together really nice, and that reflection just so much adds so much to the photo.
Yeah.
Um, I did notice around the adult holding the child, there seems to be a little bit of a halo there. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and the only other thing that drew my eye a bit that I wish wouldn't have is on the far left above the watermark, you'll see the wave that has like almost a black little section in it that's bigger than the rest. And if that could have just been edited out, I think it wouldn't have drawn my eye and distracted me from it. But I love the sun just peeking over like that, and the sky just fading to blue at the top.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Yeah. Good. All right, here's another one I decided to go ahead and put in. Again, it's not including the sun specifically, but I was like, well, they submitted it, and I didn't have too many to where I had to leave some out. So I was like, I'll just throw it in anyway. This is my friend Hans, and he said, this is a view from my back window, Mount Jefferson taken from the west side, and then all post-processing done in on 2021. So with the Mount Jefferson, it is in the middle. We have some trees blocking the view a little bit and of the mountain, so it gives us a little bit of that interest there. And then we have generally a plain sky. We have some clouds in the sky, but there's not a lot of, it's not those exciting detailed, whatever you want to call it, clouds. This is very soft clouds. And then we just have a little bit of some other, what would we call that, foliage or trees, something else here in the closer foreground.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are some nice layers of the trees there, and they really stand out against the mountain, especially the ones that are directly in front of it. Um, it's unfortunate that in that gap to the left, there wasn't another tree to balance it a little bit nicer.
Sure.
Um, but really, the only thing that I think maybe could have been done different would be to zoom in a little bit more, so
Okay.
you lose a bit of the sky, lose a bit of well all around, and or you're a little bit closer to it because I don't know if we need quite as much trees on the side or the sky or bottom. Um, as long as you have all the layers with the trees and the lighter color grasses that are in between, it looks like it's really nice layering there. And overall, I love this picture.
Yeah, I like the idea of zooming in because it emphasizes the shape and the negative presence, the dark silhouetting presence of those
Yeah.
foreground trees, and they become more substantial shapes and they become more substantial graphic elements. And so I like the notion of doing that, of zooming in to enhance that sensation of those shapes. All right, here's another one. Jason Weitenkamp is how I'm going to guess that is. Oh, I put an N in there. Weitekamp. Uh, we have sunflowers, and they're kind of, it's the end of the day, they're kind of bowing over towards the sun. We have what feels like a significant kind of starburst, really hot sun kind of idea. I don't know if it's lens flare or just what's going on, but there's a significant presence right around that sun itself, and so it just has there's something going on there. What else did you find about this image, Drake?
Yeah, I mean, there's beautiful colors in it, but it seems a little bit heavy on the saturation for my tastes. And perhaps the shadows might have been lifted a little bit much. It might be maybe in my monitor, but it's starting to look a little bit grainy in especially the lower right side where there's not so many sunflowers and more grass.
Yeah.
Um, but I love the fields of sunflowers, look really nice. And I think it's a pretty good mix. You got about two-thirds of the photo is the sunflower fields and the rest of the sky. So.
Yeah, this is a part of me wants to do a little bit of a crop on this image too, because that grass in the lower right hand area, all of the interest is right over here in this upper, or I should say middle left hand area, where all those sunflowers are. And we can still keep the sun in the frame. It's just cropping a little up and cropping a little bit out on the right. Maybe it will help focus our attention on these things that are where the attention probably should be focused on, because then what's happening, these your eye is lifted up, it's kind of going over, everything is lifting up, pointing this way, and then you end at this bright sun. Well, if there's ever a chance that you follow these down over here, way off to the right-hand side, that kind of points you down, and that's not where I don't think we want the eye to go. So either darken this area, not so it's like black, but just so it's darker, and so the eye isn't tempted to go down there, or crop this off. Either one would help. And I'm trying to determine if there's like some kind of exposure blending or something else going on, because it feels like a fairly distinct difference in processing between the foreground and the sky area. It's quite well done, but there's just that little hair of things saying, I wonder, and I would love to know the story behind the post-processing of this image, but that's not part of what we know. So I guess we'll just leave it at that.
Little mystery there.
All right, this next one is by David Richard Leadingham. Under the Sun, he says, he was covering an air show several years ago in Texas, thundered over Cedar Creek Lake. The viewing area was partially looking right into the setting sun. I knew I had to get this shot of the T-28's performance. And that's absolutely right. It's a lake, so we have the reflecting water, which is amazing to have that little bit of interest in the bottom. We then have this T-28, which looks like an old, maybe World War II propeller-driven airplane, and it's got some exhaust or some other show smoke or whatever coming out of its tail, but it is nearly perfectly silhouetted in front of the sun. The sun is a little bit on top of it, but we do have some really cool interest coming through with what's going on here in this frame. What do you think, Drake?
Yeah, this is another great one here with the sun, the sunlight sort of lighting up the canopy of the plane. That's a nice little touch there. And the shutter speed was great on this because he's got just a little motion blur, so you can tell the plane is flying. Sometimes planes can look a little bit static if they don't have that.
Yes.
And that's quite nice. And it looks like there's probably some smoke just up to the right that's just fading. It could be cloud, but I'm thinking it might be show smoke there. So it's interesting to see those details there.
Yeah.
And I like how he has just a sliver of the water on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice if there was a little more definition. I can't tell if those are boats or if they're rocks or some other feature in the water, but really it's not that distracting anyway. It's just more curiosity on that. So I think this one was really well done.
Yeah, I think I might just say crop a little bit off the top. It'll help emphasize, I think, the speed and the feeling of speed, the feeling of flight, because it's low to the ground and all of its energy is going off to the right-hand side anyway. It's not like it's trying to go up or what have you. So if we crop a little off the top, it'll just emphasize that notion of a little bit of certainly the horizontal approach, but just the direction the plane is going. It just mimics that and it emphasizes that. That's what I'm looking for. All right, this next one, Brett Baker on this one, I believe he said, I don't see it here, but I believe one of his comments was he used his cell phone on this one. He had two that he submitted at once with his cell phone, and I decided, well, I'll put one of them in. So we're looking up in a tree where a branch comes into the trunk, and there's lots of lens flare, lots of basically you can kind of quote unquote tell it's a cell phone shot. But the reason I wanted to include this, the biggest reason I wanted to include this anyway today, is that I just appreciate the fact that he submitted it and that he actually got a shot like this and he's still looking with his cell phone. You know, when I'm out there for myself, I don't always immediately go to my cell phone when I'm it's the only camera I have with me, and I'll see something that's intriguing. I'm still not at that point to say I have to grab it with my cell phone. I got several friends that do that, and I'm always impressed that they spend the time to go ahead and grab it, even though the cell phone is the only thing they have with them.
Yeah, I'll grab something with my cell phone occasionally, but again, it's not something I think of, and not definitely not something I intend to go out shooting with.
Sure.
It's more of if there's nothing else and there's something that I really want that, and more often it's for I want to get a picture of this so I remember it and where it is so I can
Yeah,
come back with my other camera.
of course.
But yeah, this is interesting here. I almost see it more as an abstract than a traditional
Mm,
picture because
sure.
there's so much out of focus and a little bit of mystery in it. Um, but yeah, you can see the lens flare, the discoloration, the upper left, and but you do see a little bit. I don't know if you want to call it sunstar, but you can see some rays coming down
Mm-hmm.
on the left-hand side of the sun there as well. So a
Mm-hmm.
little bit
Yep.
interested in it.
And it's also impressive. We have some depth of field going on, even though it's a cell phone shot and the
Yeah,
sensor and the lens is so stinking tiny. We still have that background element nice and blurred with what feels like depth of field. So that's kind of nice to see
yeah,
too.
yeah.
All right, this next one by Ian Stronghill. This was taken in late August 2020 as the sun was rising above the trees. I had been around this location since before dawn, hoping to catch the colorful sunrise, but the predicted clouds didn't show up, and the planned shot was put on hold. As I was making my way back towards the car, I just happened to take a little side trail which led me here. The sun was lighting the heather that was in full bloom, giving it an almost iridescent glow, and the mist of the background. And then I have to click see more, and I didn't click that when I made the screen capture. So I'm sorry, Ian, I didn't get your whole thing in here. But yes, this image is about atmosphere. It's about that glow that he talks about. And yeah, so your initial plan did not work out, but this did, and that is the absolute awesome thing about landscape photography is that probably you can still probably make something work, and that's one of those things about your mindset where if you and I've done this myself, I'm guilty as all get out, where I have had a bad attitude and just like it didn't turn out. I'm an old curmudgeon, and I go back to the car and whatever, and you know you just go on to the next thing or whatever. But if you keep your eyes open, you know, like Ian did here, you're gonna come away with a beauty. Tell me what you think here, Drake.
Yeah, this is like you say, it is a beauty. The atmosphere that mist adds is really special in this. When I look at it straight on from the bottom, it's almost like there's a slightly dark path leading right up
Yes,
the center there,
I'm
and
glad you
that I mean
mentioned that.
that's perfect that it draws you right up there.
Yeah.
Um, and the clouds that are above it in the sky just sort of seem to streak away from it. They're a
Yep.
nice feature above it. Um, the only thing that is a little bit off to me is the sun isn't quite center. It's not off too far to the side, so it seems like it should be bumped over to the center a bit, or bumped the other way so it's to the side. But yeah, that's a minor criticism because this is another beautiful image.
Yeah, that path that really I think makes it that virtual
Yeah,
path, maybe we should say, because I don't know
yeah,
that it would be something you could actually walk down, but visually you walk down there
yeah.
and it just takes you right to the sun, and there's just that color. I mean, it's just gorgeous color. So good capture, definitely good capture. Um, there's I don't know that there's much I might suggest to improve in cropping or anything like that. Um, it's just over, you know, I would always encourage people when you're there, certainly experiment with different things. And I certainly don't know what else he did. He probably just sent us his best one, but you know, this one comes out really well.
Yeah.
And Bree says, great editing. Yeah, there's definitely some good editing here. All right. Well, that looks like that is it for us. And I'm going to hit that button to get out of my full screen view on that. and I'll just bring us back up. All right. So that's it, Drake. Thank you so much for joining us, for being here and looking through these images with me. It's been a fantastic treat to have you on. And just, I know you're like me. Whenever we got photos going, it's just the best thing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I loved it. Really enjoyed the experience again, Brent, and hope everybody got something good out of this and look forward to the next time we do this.
Absolutely. All right. And so, everyone, thank you for so much for being here as well. And if I had my act together, I would have the next topic already lined up, but I'll have to put that in the notes below once I get that figured out. It'll be just another day or less. And then when I certainly put this in the audio format of the podcast, it'll be figured out as well. I've been thinking of a few items and I just haven't made that decision yet. I've been working on too many things this last couple of days, so I haven't made a decision on what the next topic will be. Of course, if you're a member of the Latitude Photography Podcast Facebook group, you'll see that come through as well, and you'll be able to participate in submitting there. Or once you know what it is, again, you could see it down there in the description here in a day or two. Once I get it figured out, you can always email me, Brent at latitudephotographypodcast.com. You can email me those submissions, and I'd be happy to have those included. Just like we had that first one coming in, was emailed in, so you don't see it with my web browser, screen capture view or what have you. So thanks again, Drake. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you being here, and we'll catch you next time. Until then, happy shooting.
See ya.